Hi everybody, Dr. John here at LifeSpa Ayurveda. Today I want to talk about ancient grains. I did write a book called Eat Wheat, and it wasn't that I want everybody on the planet to eat wheat, but the fact that many folks are saying that grains are bad when the science doesn't actually show that is something that we needed to talk about. Wheat is a hard to digest grain. Grains are hard to digest because they have anti-nutrients on them, protective shells that actually repel bugs and digestion. So you need really good, strong digestion to break them down. And if you have weak digestion, you're not going to digest the grains as well as they should. Studies show that they'll go undigested into the intestinal tract. Those grains and also fats as well, if they're not properly broken down with strong digestion, they'll be too big to get in the blood and nourish you. They'll get uptaken into the garbage can, which is the collecting ducts of your lymphatic system. And those grains that are incompletely digested will go into lymph and give you extra weight around your belly. They'll go into the lymph system and cause tiredness and lethargy. They'll cause immune compromise. They can cause brain fog because there's a brain lymphatic system. When that gets congested, you have cognitive decline and many other concerns. Your skin, which is the skin-associated lymphatic tissue, can get congested, and you can have congestion in the lymph where your skin becomes an exit ramp for those impurities through eczema and rashes and things like that. So do we blame the grain on these symptoms, or do we blame the inability to digest them on these symptoms? And there's also something else involved here, which is the processing of the grains. If you go to the grocery store and buy bread, that bread is not a whole grain. In fact, studies show, the FDA says that for it to be called whole wheat, it only has to weigh 49% of what it did when you put the whole grain, the whole kernel, into the grinder. And when it comes out, it only has to weigh 49% of that to be considered whole grain. So the sperm and the endosperm, which is where all the oils are, and the nutrition is, has been taken out because that makes it more shelf stable, right? So if you want to get a whole grain, the Whole Grain Council has something, and they've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies on the benefit of grain when you take the whole grain. They have a stamp that's the whole grain stamp that makes sure when you're getting the actual whole grain. And generally, those grains will need to be refrigerated because there are oils in them and they're actually volatile. So it's really, really important. Grains are also seasonal. Studies show that the bugs in your gut are going to change from one season to the next to the next. In the spring, when the carbs and the grains are not harvested, our ancestors and our hunter-gatherer tribes that are still here today, they found that they had significantly more bugs, actinobacteria, that are really good at digesting fat and fiber in the springtime and really good at digesting sugar in the fall with an increased proliferation of bugs that are really good at delivering sugar called bacteroidetes. Studies also show in the fall that we produce more amylase, the enzyme for digesting the starch in some of those grains. So we're better equipped to eat these foods in a seasonal manner than we are eating them all year long in a super highly processed way. That's the kind of critical piece of the puzzle. So I'm a big fan of sourcing ancient grains, and I'm going to talk about some of the ancient grains. I'm going to talk about where you can get some of the ancient grains here, so stay with me. There's a full article about this on my website at lifespa.com, and while you're there, you can go to my store, you can sign up for our newsletter and get all this information every week. You can also go to our Ayurvedic store, get all of our Ayurvedic herbs that are there, as well as you can follow me on social, where I put out this information as well. Okay, so studies on ancient grains have shown that that whole grains have significantly more minerals and vitamins, and as well as the anti-nutrients. People who eat more grains than less grains have significantly less all-cause mortality, including from heart and lung and diabetes and infection, which is really important. Studies from Harvard show that folks who eat whole grains actually have less heart disease, and folks that don't. This was a study with wheat. So people who ate wheat had significantly less heart disease in one study, significantly less diabetes in another study. Those were both Harvard studies, both with over 100,000 folks in each study, compared to the folks who ate gluten-free grain, right? So there's a really interesting study. Studies even show that people who ate whole wheat versus people who ate gluten-free, the people who ate gluten-free they had 4 times more mercury in their blood than people who ate the whole wheat. They had significantly less killer T cells, a measure of immunity, and significantly more bad bugs and less good bugs than the people who were eating the whole wheat. So there's plenty of studies that nobody really talks about, and it's not about the wheat, it's not about the grain, it's all about the processed nature of it and the fact that our digestive system has been broken down so significantly we can't digest much of anything anymore, and we have to bubble wrap our diet. That's why I wrote the book called Eat Wheat, which was a troubleshooting guide to fix that underlying weak link in your digestion. It's why I wrote the book, because I see so many patients day in and day out who can't digest wheat anymore. When I started in practice in 1984, never had that before. We take people off of wheat, they feel a little better, but it wasn't like it is today where people can't digest much of anything. So there's studies on the whole grains, the ancient grains, that show that they have significantly more antioxidants in them. They lower blood sugar, lower inflammation, lower stress, lower lipid levels, lower risk of heart disease. And they say it's due to the increased amount of fiber, which is so critical, as well as the antioxidants. So some of the ancient grains that you should know about, the Einkorn wheat, which is the oldest one of all, is a very wet, heavy grain. A little difficult to make bread with, but can be done. It's high in iron and zinc, and it's really great for your blood sugar. Spelt is a larger grain, lots and lots of B vitamins. So it's really good for stability of your blood sugar than some of the other grains. Khorasan or kamut, a dear friend of mine, Bob Quinn, he's been growing kamut up in Montana. I did a podcast with him, and he's been growing it for about 30 years. And the studies on that whole grain, whole wheat, are amazing. They increase significantly more antioxidants, really good for lowering cholesterol, lowering risk of heart disease, inflammation, blood sugar. Amazing grain. You can get that in any of these ancient grain suppliers, places I'm going to talk about in a minute. There's emmer wheat, which is one of the most common ancient grains, and that's really good for pasta. And it's really easy to digest. The gluten's a little bit different than some of the other ancient grains. Rye, it's a cross between wheat and barley. The bran's been removed in regular modern rye, but the pumpernickel, the old-fashioned way, that's typically the whole grain if you can find it in its original form. Some of the ancient grain suppliers that I like are the Grand Teton ancient grain is ancientgrain.com. Jovial Foods is also good. Bob's Red Mill are a couple of sources for good ancient grains. I hope that helps you. Read my book or read my articles. They're all free at lifespa.com to get a little bit more education about grains. They're seasonal. I'm not saying eat them all year long. This is springtime, and this is a time where there are no carbs to be had. So this is a time to lower your carbohydrates. But come fall, you want to actually change the microbiome again with a different stable of bugs, and that's what's been happening for millions of years in all species, including us. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard. Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.